Okay, let's get this out of the way. I don't like anime. Yeah, I know that's a very close-minded thing to say, and it's not an absolute statement. Like, there are a couple of, like, manga/anime series that I do like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Dragon Ball Z, but, you know, with those picks, you can clearly see those are mainstream picks. And I think, like, a large part of that comes from, like, how unique they feel. Now, I'm sure Dragon Ball Z has created its own fair share of, like, tropes, and it's not like these series are immune from criticism from me, but they have a very specific flair, you know, they feel distinct. Everything else, again, I hate to generalize, but, like, to me, and, like, my taste, like, everything else just looks the same. Like, if you go on Crunchyroll, like, there are, like, 1,000 series that look nearly identical to me. And they all sound alike. Like, it's gonna drive me mad, man. It's like, why are there so many of these with, like, such similar titles? Like, you look at the plot synopsis, you look at, like, the entire vibe of everything, it's like 99% of them are these weird, generic fantasy things. And it just boggles my mind. Look. I get it. I'm a normie. Alright? That's all there is to it. I'm not here to dog on people's interests, alright? It's all semantics. I'm sure you could scrutinize all of the things that I like. And that goes to show that I'm not the target demographic here. I'm gonna piss off a lot of people. And that goes for gacha games. Like, if you were to conglomerate every single grievance I have about the medium, the perfect culmination of my annoyances are gacha games. The story, the setting, the characters, they're all so annoying and boring at the same time. Now look, this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, I feel like these gacha games exemplify the absolute worst of anime, alright? I know that there are gonna be pitchforks here, but I feel like almost every single gacha character sucks. It feels like they can never take risks with these characters. They're all overly quote-unquote likable, and, you know, all of these actually, like, fleshed out characters, they all kind of have to be, like, buddy-buddy with you and, like, everyone else, and there's just, like, so little, like, actual character conflict between the fleshed out characters themselves. At least when it comes to the gacha games I've played, it feels like all of the morally gray characterization and complexity is delegated almost exclusively to NPCs, and all of the conflict is directed towards them. And it goes without saying that these NPCs lack the screen time and effort afforded to, you know, the characters you could actually spend money on. And this leads us to the stories themselves. They also suck. Now look, it's not that they can't be interesting, they can broach somewhat interesting concepts, but because the framework of the stories themselves have to focus around these overly safe characters, it then becomes increasingly more difficult to get invested in a narrative that can't really do anything interesting with those characters. And what you're left with is an experience that's 99% filler and padding. Excruciatingly long padding. It's just a non-stop barrage of unnecessary sidetracking and the fleshing out of boring characters that have no depth. Sure, there's the illusion of depth, but because of the nature of the game and the target demographic, all of these characters have to exist cleanly inside their little cookie cutters. When a story expects you to like almost every single main character that it throws at you, it's gonna be boring. NPCs, they don't really count. They're not fleshed out enough. They don't have enough screen time, alright? I mean, you could just tell by how they look. They look unimportant. All of the effort and design is clearly afforded to the real characters. Look, it's not that I think that, like, the writers aren't good writers. I am sure that they are very talented. It's more so about the restrictions and the confines of the gacha medium that holds them back. It forces them into doing all of these tropes. And in my opinion, or at least, like, I imagine, it restricts their creative freedom. I'm just not a fan of a medium preventing writers from writing stories they want to actually write. Again, like, I might be projecting a little bit. I might be getting this completely wrong, but I do feel like the target demographic and, you know, like, very specific, like, vocal groups within their player base prevent them from doing truly interesting things with their characters. So not only do gacha games represent the absolute worst that anime has to offer, it can't even afford to have any of its strengths either. At least any anime has the structure of a story, you know? It might be a shitty story, but at least it's still a story. Even if it has bad pacing, it doesn't have shit on a gacha game's pacing. At least It has a clearly defined beginning, middle, and end. It's able to be visually engaging. Sure, in a gacha you might get like 30 seconds of an interesting cinematic, but that's preceded by 4 hours of exposition dumping while everyone just stands around doing nothing. It doesn't follow the basic rules of implementing a narrative that is not only immediately interesting, but one that understands brevity. It just can't keep you on a hook. And it gets so bad that I feel like I would honestly have a better time watching one of those animes on Crunchyroll that I'd rather die than watch. They at least have a standardized story structure. I can't stop playing these fucking things. I hate almost everything about them. But from the ones that I played, the gameplay's alright. Hell! I'd go one step further. I'd say the gameplay's pretty good. And it just so happens that I am a crippling gambling addict. Look, alright, I'm not really a gambling addict. Like, at most, I might get like a little scratcher at the gas station or something. And I'm definitely not gonna like spend beyond my means. Hell, a good portion of the games that I have played, I haven't dropped a single penny in. But gambling in video games, that's my shit. That's why I like roguelikes so much. That's why I played Destiny for half a decade. Give me those dopamine hits! And I'm gonna go on record saying this. I liked the loot boxes as far back as TF2 in like the early 2010s, man. I got an unusual and the unusual market crashed and, well. Anyway, I don't know, I thought they kind of like hit those stride, like in like Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, hell, even Infinite Warfare, like yeah, it sucks, alright? Like I know that loot boxes, they have their fair share of disadvantages. And they can introduce an element of pay to win, you know? I mean, it is pay to win, alright? Let's not kid ourselves. But at least as far as cosmetics go, I like that system. Like, yeah, it kind of sucked that you couldn't, like, outright buy your skins or whatever. But the fact you could unlock everything for free, I don't know. I kind of like that system more than the fucking Call of Duty store. Now they expect you to pay like $20 for a skin. Get the fuck out of here. But that's kind of why I like these gachas. Like, you could get away with performing very well without spending any money in them. You just gotta get really lucky. I like that. And yeah, I may have started playing them as a joke. Going into them, I was like, hey, I'm gonna just like rip on this shit. It's probably gonna be abysmal dog shit. It might make for decent content, even if no one's gonna watch it. It might be entertaining to me, alright? No one's watching this video even. I don't even know who I'm talking to. But, you know, I'll record a riff track, and I'll be done with it, right? But then I played, and I was like, God damn it. It's fun. Fuck. I'm blaming Destiny, alright? They announced fucking Arknights crossover. I didn't know what the fuck a gacha game was until that happened. I'd hear the term thrown around, but I'm like, nah, I ain't going anywhere near that shit. But now, you know, I don't know. I started a few series to see like, hey, actually, you know, why don't we pivot a little? Because these are free-to-play games. And unlike other free-to-play games like Destiny 2, all of the content is available for free. It's only the characters that you could spend money on. And even then, you could get those characters for free. So I was like, alright, why don't we do a series to kind of gauge what is the experience like playing this game without spending money? Like, if you ignore the in-game shop, is this a viable option for gaming on the cheap? You know, like let's say that you got like a second-hand PS4 or something, you know, and you don't really have that much money to spend on games. Can you have a good time playing these games without spending any money? And you can, I think. Again, mileage will vary, but I kind of like went through the main story expecting it to be like a mobile game. Was like, yeah, here's like the main set of like levels, and then at a certain point, the difficulty spikes, and that really kind of signals to the player like, yeah, this is where you're supposed to spend money. But that never happens. You can quote unquote complete these games with relatively no difficulty. Again, that is kind of a problem I have with them, in that it feels like the very core of like the difficulty is completely divorced from the rest of the game. Like when it comes to exploration, when it comes to the story, there isn't really that much gameplay at all. And to me, that doesn't really leverage the strength of the video game medium that well. It feels like you're kind of playing a visual novel, and then in some other part of the game, that's the actual gameplay. Kind of lame to me. And over there, with like the actually difficult gameplay, the end game, so to speak, that's where you kind of run into that potential paywall barrier. But even then, that can be circumvented by just like playing smart most of the time. Again, it is going to be subject to your luck, but I kind of like that. Again, some people are probably not going to like that, but you know, I'm a gambling man. But to me, it's just kind of a shame that you can't really engage with like the very core fundamentals of the gameplay unless it's this like 1% of the game that's actually dedicated to it. But you know, on the topic of gambling, I'm just gonna shoot straight with you. I honestly don't feel like any kid or teenager really should be playing these games at all. Gambling addiction can be like a really serious thing. And, you know, you hear the stories of kids, they just start spending money like crazy without their parents' consent. And that's a problem. And on top of that, you know, like when your mind is still developing, you know, it can impact the way your mind handles your dopamine, you know? Like it could be very damaging, I think. I'm not actually a doctor, but if you're a responsible adult, I think these games are perfectly passable as games, honestly. But speaking of adult, I'm not a fan of the sexualization. I think that's like one of my main gripes with, you know, the whole anime thing. I know it's not exclusive to the medium. I know that there was just sexualization everywhere, and I think it is kind of a problem. I feel like the weight that we put on like physical attractiveness, like as a society, is a little problematic. I don't mean to be getting political here. It's just like, this is my personal opinion. I don't really fucks with it. Yeah, I don't really fucks with it. Like the jiggle, you know, the cleavage slots. It's a little bit. It's just not my cup of tea, and that goes for the dudes too. But like, I personally just don't like playing as sluts, you know, or dude sluts. You know, it goes both ways.
I won't let you down.
But yeah, this is kind of gonna be a pivot for the channel. I'm gonna kind of segue to lots of gacha-focused content, and I guess, look, if you want to watch someone who effectively hates a sizable chunk of anime and hates the majority of the gacha games he's actually playing, play said gacha games, having a miserable fucking time doing so, I don't know, maybe it could be entertaining, you know? Maybe catch a stream or two as well, I don't know. But if that doesn't really sound interesting to you, you know, you could go ahead and unsubscribe, you know. I'm not gonna take it personally, you know, it's like, you subscribe for a certain type of content. If that content changes, you know, I feel like it's valid to unsub, you know. But yeah, that's gonna be a decent chunk of the content going forward. I'm still gonna, you know, play other games, you know, but there is going to be a shift of what kind of games are going to be showing up here. And again, I'm just going to be raging at fucking like anime girls on my screen and just like losing my shit. I kind of play it a little over the top, you know, like I don't actually get too heated over this. It's just fiction. It's like, who cares? But, you know, it's kind of fun to just take the filter off and scream at the void, you know. It's somewhat liberating. But yeah, I guess... Fuck, I don't know how to end the video. Fuck you! No! No! Ah! No, why'd I have to do the vibe check? Fuck, fuck,